On the evening of November 17th, 1904, a fully loaded Toronto Railway Company streetcar, number 642 on the Beaches route, approached de Grassi Street and Queen East. At the same time, a Montreal-bound freight train approached the same intersection, just feet from the Riverdale station. In seconds, the TRC streetcar was sliced in half, killing 3 passengers and injuring scores of others. But changes were made. The Crosstown Viaduct came into being. Welcome to history. The building in front of you is the former Postal Station G, which was built in 1913 and designed by E.J. Lennox, the designer of Old City Hall. It is a heritage property at the corner of Queen Street East and Salter and is now part of the Toronto Public Library. Dingman Hall has been a landmark at the corner of Broadview and Queen since it was built in 1891 for Archibald Dingman, a man influential in Alberta's early oil drilling industry. In 1907, it became the Broadview Hotel, and it still graces the corner today. In 1860, Daniel Conboy opened a workshop in Valentine, Ontario, where he produced rooftops for horse-drawn carriages. In 1870, he moved to Uxbridge and then to Toronto, where he opened a factory and shop at 407 King Street West. The business was incorporated in 1905 as the Conboy Carriage Company. Architect James Ellis designed the new factory located on the Don Roadway near the Queen Street Bridge. On July 10, 1924, fire destroyed the factory, causing $500,000 damage to stock and equipment. Soon after, the company was discontinued. Near here, on the east bank of the Don River, John Scadding built a log cabin, establishing his claim to Lot 15, stretching from Lake Ontario north to present-day Danforth Avenue. Scadding was manager of the Simcoe Estate in Devonshire, England, and secretary to Governor Simcoe in the first government of Upper Canada, now Ontario. This cabin moved in 1879 to the Canadian National Exhibition and is Toronto's oldest building. During the 1840s and the 1850s in Toronto, mass immigration from Great Britain, especially Ireland during the potato famine, swelled the city's population to more than double in a decade. While Irish immigrants settled in Old Cabbagetown, many decided to live and work in this area of the Donlands, named Corktown. It was in honor of County Cork. The House of Providence stood amid manicured gardens and lawns south of St. Paul's Catholic Church on the east side of Power Street. It served the aged, orphans, the poor, sick, and the newly arrived in Toronto. It was an important social welfare agency in Corktown. However, by the 1890s, its duties were taken over by St. Michael's Hospital and eventually demolished. Today, nothing marks the spot of this important people's institution. King Street was laid out in 1793 by Governor Simcoe and named after King George III. It was the main commercial street in York, but after the Great Fire of 1849, the eastern part of King Street declined as businesses moved west to settle around the King and Yonge intersection. Some retail businesses moved north up Yonge to Queen, which lowered King Street's influence and prestige. The old downtown was centered in and around King and Jarvis Streets. With the construction of the St. Lawrence Hall in 1850-1851, prominent Torontonians have predicted a bright future for the city, especially for the East Side and King Street. However, with the announcement that Timothy Eaton's new store would be established not on King Street, but on Yonge Street at Queen, merchants decided to follow. The die was cast. On April 7th, 1849, a small fire fanned by strong winds grew into an inferno. Store owners and sightseers poured into the old commercial district of the city, centered around the old market at King and Jarvis. But by morning, most of the downtown area was in ruins, including St. James Church, market, and shops and houses which lined both sides of King and Jarvis. The Daniel Brooke building survived the fire and still stands to this day to the west of this plaque. The first church in York, then Toronto, was constructed at the northeast corner of King Street and Church in 1803. In 1850, the present St. James was begun, resurrected from the ruins of the Great Fire of 1849. The church was completed in 1874 and is the fourth structure on the site. At the northeast corner of Adelaide and Church was the Mechanics' Institute. Modeled after similar organizations in the United Kingdom, the Institute was organized in 1830. The goal of the Institute was simple: the education of all working men, and it operated a lending library and offered classes in a wide range of topics and subjects. The Mechanics' Institute gave way to a public library system, and from that, the Toronto Public Library was born. Toronto Street may have been the street of fashionable business offices back in the day, but the history of the area is not for the faint of heart. On the southwest corner of Leader Lane and King Street, opposite Toronto Street, where today the King Edward Hotel welcomes guests, was York's first jail and hanging yard. With space needed, a second jail opened at Court Street and Toronto Street a few years later. It became the place to watch hangings, and on April 12, 1838, nearly 10,000 people stood watch as Samuel Lount and Peter Matthews were hanged after the 1837 rebellion. Justice in Old Toronto, indeed. The four corners of Simcoe and King were once known as salvation, damnation, education, and legislation. But it was also the site of York's first hospital to the west at John and King.